Pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take 30 seconds for silent reflection. Thank you. Meetings of note. C1, back to school, convocation, 8 a.m., August 9th, 2024, Garden City High School Gymnasium. 4 or more board members may be in attendance. Next up is approval of agenda. Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move we approve tonight's agenda following amendments. Item D1, additional classified personnel actions for consideration, which is item F3. Also, amendment number 2, removal of policy IIBF-R, acceptable use policy on the use of artificial intelligence or AI from item F.4.A on the consent agenda and move it to item I.3 new business for discussion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda with the following amendments. All in favor, raise your left hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Time for delegations, questions and answers, public comments. Public comments?
Do we have a comment card?
I do not.
I'm gonna do a comment card real quick.
Sorry about that. I should have known better. Being on the school board for the time I was on there, I apologize in advance. I'm Mike Utes. I'm a retired chief of police here in Garden City. I served 37 years on the department. And I'm here to talk about closing schools and classroom reconfigurations. I was on the board from 1999 to 2011, with over 6 years as the board chair. And I have over 25 years of leadership with this community, and I'm very well invested in this community and school district. Our family is a strong advocate of USD-457 and has always supported the district. My wife was a school nurse for 25 years, and she retired recently. We had 3 daughters that attended USD-457 from K-12 and graduated. When I was on the board, our motto was kids first, and I hope that still stands. Whatever decision we made on the board, kids first. Make sure what we were doing was going to be right for the kids. I'm not here to bash you guys. I'm here to give you my insight and my input, and from what I've been visiting with the community on. You have a tough job. Been there, done it, got the t-shirt, I wear it, wore it, threw it away now, because I'm not there. Now, school configuration. When I was on the Board of Education, we did discuss and had a study done on reconfiguration. I was a very strong proponent of K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12. I did not like the intermediate schools. But when we did the study, it was luck of the draw. The data showed that the intermediate schools during those 2-year window excelled. So we stayed with the intermediate schools. Although I fought it hard to revisit that. Going K-5, 6, 8, and 9, 12 has many advantages that I've heard you guys speak right on point. Has some great advantages to it. It's one less transition for our kids. That extra transition for these young kids is unremarkable, it's hard on them. And I think we need to continue looking at it. However, the school closings. Recently, pre-COVID, there was a study done on closing some schools. Did we go back and revisit that study that was done prior to spending thousands of dollars on an outside firm come in and study? President, I know what an outside firm looking at your organization looks like. It's not always a bed of roses. Sometimes it's what they think it is without talking to your community. When I was on the board, we looked at closing Georgia Matthews because it was one of the oldest schools. But this was being looked at when there were huge financial woes. When I was on the board, we were looking at closing a school because of financial woes, looking at cutting positions because of financial woes. Things were tough when I was on this board. I'm sure they are today. But I don't think closing schools is the answer or what is best for kids. It is my understanding that the two rural schools, as well as Georgia Matthews and Gertrude Walker, are being evaluated to close. There's a very strong voice out there from our parents that have students in these rural schools not to close. We're hearing it, we're hearing it, hearing it. But I'm here also to be the voice for our diversity in the community that we thrive on. I have a strong relationship. The president knows I have a strong relationship with our Somalian community, our Burmese community, and Vietnamese community, and Asian families. And that grew from the thwarted bomb threat that was in 2016. Reaching out to them, they've reached out to me and asked me to come be their voice to them. They know very little of what's going on. Rural schools know what's going on. These families do not understand what is going on. There's a communication gap somewhere. Taking kids out of their neighborhood schools is concerning to them. They're very concerned about that. And I think we can all agree smaller schools are always better to have for better education, better achievement, better behavior. If closing schools is one of the answers because we all know we're having difficulty recruiting teachers, that's not the answer. We need to re-reflect on that. That's such a term. If there's any grammar folks in here, don't correct me on the re-reflect. Our community is thriving and growing. We continue to grow. We need not close schools down. Let's not be a Wichita. Let's not be Wichita. We can do better. We can find ways. Past school boards and administration. At last retreat for the Board of Education, at least one member had made a comment about being frustrated with past board or education administration for being in the position you are now and the conditions of the school. I can tell you when I was on the board, we worked very hard.
That's 5 minutes.
Okay. Can I finish up real quick?
Okay.
Okay.
Last comment.
All right. I worked very hard to get things done. Jerry Bell did things. We worked things. Don't cast stones at the past board. Reach out to your board members, your past board members, and your administration. Find out what they did, what they have. It may help you. Because passing a bond issue right now, you got an uphill battle. Okay. And finally, I know I threw a lot at you, but thank you for what you do every day. It's not the best paying job in the world, but you guys volunteered for it. You got elected. Listen to your folks out there. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Move on to item E1, recognition of outgoing President John Weesey and outgoing Vice President Jackie Jiggett. Dr. Dominguez.
Mr. Weesey, I'm gonna have you get up here, if that's okay. Where's Roy at? There's Roy. Get over here.
And grateful appreciation for years of service of USD-457 Board of Education and the students of Garden City Public Schools, Mr. John Weezy, President, 23-24. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Let's get the pick. Ms. Jackie Jiggett, congratulations and thank you for your service as VP. She is at the Finney County Fair this evening and would have been present had she not been with that. Thank you for your service.
Okay, we'll move on to item F, the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve the consent agenda as listed. All in favor, please raise your left hand. Opposed, the same. Guess we don't have to do left today because Mark and I here. Motion passes. Okay, we'll move on to item G, board reports. Science of Reading presentation, Heather Stegman, Director of Instruction.
Good evening. How are you guys?
Good.
We talk frequently with all of you about the science of reading and our students' progress on data and assessments. And we throw a lot of terms at you that we wanted to make sure that you have a clear understanding of, just to make it easier for you guys to understand and support us in our decisions. So we have been working with Amplify Learning, and they are here today to provide a informational meeting about the science of reading. So the two presenters we have with us tonight are Amy Rodriguez and Julie Couch. Both work for Amplify Reading. And in addition, they have given you some supporting materials that they'll be referencing throughout the PowerPoints. Amy, you can start whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you and good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. Am I able to share my screen or how will we go through the PowerPoint?
Yes.
So you can use the deal up there. Yeah.
So I'll need to click through it?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, we're gonna have to click through it for
Okay,
you.
that's okay. I'm gonna go pretty quick through them. So I will let you know when we're ready, but I just want to say welcome. We're very excited to have a few minutes to talk to you about the science of reading. So go ahead and click. There we go. We want to just first start with what is the science of reading? And when we take a look at what that is, there's a few key things that really stand out. First of all, the science of reading is based on a really broad and diverse range of studies. And all of the conclusions from those studies are based on rigorous scientific methods. So they really use the scientific process as they went through this. It's also ongoing. It's been going on for the last 50 years. So this research has been around a long time and it continues to grow. There's also a real breadth and depth of knowledge that contributes to a very comprehensive understanding of what literacy development is. We know that all of this research put together gives us a foundational understanding of the processes that contribute to skilled reading and writing. So it's not just about how do we develop skilled readers, but also skilled writers. So it's really about the science of literacy, maybe, if you will. And it also really helps us, all of this research helps us to identify some of those reading difficulties and guide us to how can we prevent some of these reading difficulties, and also how can we intervene? Go ahead and click. Oh, shoot. So yeah, with you, you're not going to get the animations, but that's okay. We'll go through this. So what you see here is we've got a couple of different science of reading principles, things that we learned from all of this research. And the first one is that science of reading really is, or science-based instruction is a matter of equity. So what we see in this graph is that fourth graders have really been stagnant with their proficiency rates over the last, well, since 1992, if you will. But what we learned from all of this research is that students who have a really strong science of reading core program, 95% of first graders can learn how to read by the end of first grade. And that being the case, we should start seeing that stagnant fourth grade data really start growing as we get more and more schools using that science of reading as their core program. So it really creates equity among all students when they have high quality science-based instruction. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Another principle is that universal screening and progress monitoring are critical to ensure that all students receive the right instruction. Science of reading is not just about one thing. There's many pieces to it. And here you see 5 different pieces. First of all, we have to screen our students. We have to have high quality science-based core instruction, some personalized learning, as well as science-based intervention, and then professional development for the educators that are providing all of this instruction. So those are things to look for as you're looking for a high quality science of reading program. Go ahead and go to the next one. The next thing that we look at is that, I said that 95% of first graders can learn to read by the end of the school year. We know that we need to have, we need to really create some really strong, confident readers. And if we have that strong core program, we are reducing the need for intervention. Once students are labeled as needing intervention, most of them are labeled that way all the way through high school. So we're trying to get that taken care of in those early years so that they're not stuck with that throughout. And so that's another principle behind the science of reading. And the next one, yep. The next thing that we learned from all of this data is that in order to have really skilled readers and writers, students need to be really proficient in both language comprehension and word recognition. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of these as we continue through. So I'll have you click again. And this is another view of that needing to have both language comprehension and word recognition. Word recognition is what we're going to start looking at first. But what happens is in the early years, all of these different skills are kind of taught independently, but throughout the years, they weave together and really need to be embedded within instruction. And as students become more automatic with their word recognition and more strategic with their language comprehension, they become skilled readers, which you typically start to see those strands really tightly woven in about 3rd grade. So if you'll go to the next one, we'll start talking about word recognition first. So word recognition are those pieces that are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, and handwriting. These are pieces that students, they're not innate. Students are not born with the ability to learn these skills. As a matter of fact, brain research tells us that there's no connectors between what we need to make this happen. And so with instruction that's really grounded in that science of reading, those connections will be made by instructors. So as we continue to look at word recognition, we get to that next reading principle, which is that learning is not, yep, go ahead and go. You were right. You're good. Learning to read is not natural and must be taught systematically and explicitly. That's a mouthful and it is a lot. And when we think about that word recognition piece of the rope, we have to know that there is a progression that makes sense. Like we go from most simple skills to more complex skills. We also want to really make sure that we are focusing in on specific skills and moving toward mastery. There's direct instruction that's clear and direct, teacher modeling, consistent routines, scaffold supports. The big thing is all students have access to grade level materials. That goes back to that very first principle we talked about when we talked about equity for all students. So if you want to go ahead and go to the next one, this is another principle that expands on what we just talked about, is that we want that explicit and systematic instruction on word recognition to be really engaging and using those multiple modes and senses. So there's a lot there and it's hard. And again, like I said, it's not natural. So we want to kind of get rid of that kill and drill, drill and kill. And we want kids to have fun. We want them to use all of their sentences. We want them to be speaking and listening and using their physical senses by doing tapping and other things like that. So that's what we're going to see with this principle. Go ahead and go to the next one. Now we're going to dive into a principle that has to do with a little bit more with language comprehension. But before that, what is language comprehension? When we look at language comprehension, it's about knowledge, vocabulary, sentences, reasoning, and composition, writing composition. That is more natural, right? It's innate. As soon as we're born, we start to listen and we start to gain vocabulary and we start to understand language. So throughout our life, those language comprehension strands, they continue to grow and get more complex as we become more independent readers. The other thing with this, as our word recognition becomes more automatic, so in other words, I've learned my sounds. I can put those sounds together to make words and I can blend and start reading. That becomes more automatic. Then I can start using more energy to really dig into these language comprehension skills at a much deeper level. I can start making inferences and reasoning based on what I've learned. I can also start making mental models of what's happening in a text, and I can see myself as a reader and a writer. So that's what's happening in the language comprehension strand. So go ahead and go to the next science of reading principle, which is that background knowledge and vocabulary, which is that language comprehension strand, are as critical to comprehension as decoding. So being able to tap and sound out words and put those words together into sentences to read a connected text is just as important as building that background knowledge and vocabulary. This quote that you see here, I really love because it talks about, I can read every word on a page of, say, for instance, my son's architecture magazine, but I may not understand what it says because I don't have the background knowledge or the vocabulary to put all of those words together to make meaning out of it. And so as we build background knowledge and vocabulary for our students, we're helping them to use those decoding skills to become more critical readers and writers. Okay. So a lot of the way that we do this is through listening comprehension, and that's going to look like read alouds. And what we know about listening comprehension is that students have really great listening comprehension. Like I said, they start from birth being able to understand, what does no mean, right? But then, and so they can start thinking about those literacy elements like plot and character development and making inferences through listening. And the reason why we do that is because their reading comprehension doesn't catch up to that listening comprehension until about age 13. The reason for that is because we're still learning the code. We're still learning to put words together. We're learning to put sentences together. We're learning about dialogue and all those different pieces of punctuation. And so that really, it makes reading comprehension a little bit harder to access. So we focus on listening comprehension through oral language and read alouds. Okay, so go ahead and go to the next one. So those were the reading principles. And now we're going to take just a quick look at what does that mean for the classroom? So we know all of this information and we know these principles, but what does it mean? The first thing that we're going to see is the use of decodable readers. When we are using decodable readers, and I think you must have a little bit older slides than I do, but that's okay. What we know is that all students are having access to the same grade level readers. They are immediately putting into practice what they are learning in those skill lessons in those connected readers, and those readers follow that instructional path. That's going to be really important because what we're not seeing is we're not seeing a workshop model that has guided reading, leveled readers, predictable text, because we want students to be able to tap and blend those sounds together to make meaning of words. We also are going to be shifting away from decodable readers that don't follow a scope and sequence of phonics in that aligned instruction. Okay, you can go to the next one. Yep, that's the one I just talked about. So we'll just go to the next one. I guess you just had an extra slide. So here we go. The next one is that we want to provide all students with dedicated phonics instruction. Again, we know from brain research, it's not learning to read is not innate. We want to make sure students are taught explicitly and systematically, and that's part of one of those principles that we talked about. They also need to have time to do this. It takes about 60 minutes to really develop strong, systematic, explicit instruction where every single student receives that phonics instruction, not just some students. And that's a little bit of shift away from phonics instruction that's only given on an as-needed basis, right? I'm a second grade teacher and I just have a few students that are struggling. We want to get away from that because, again, it goes back to that equity piece. When I start reading those really difficult multisyllabic words in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, I need to be able to know how to attack those. And I am only going to know that if I've had a really full, complete instruction in that basic foundational phonics. It also is a shift away from those mini lessons where students are having a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So some phonics, some guided reading, some writing, and some vocabulary practice. All right, so the next shift that you're going to see, which is this slide right here, is that we want to help students with their phonics-based scaffolds. So again, all students have grade level materials, and we are scaffolding for them. We're helping build those brain paths that they need to get automatic with those sounds and those readings. So we don't want them guessing. Instead, we're asking them to sound it out, and we're providing them with scaffolds such as, let's go back to the sounds that we've learned. What sound does this letter make? And we're going to help them with that way. What it is not is it's not encouraging students to guess. So what word would make sense there? Or what's in the picture? Those are okay strategies, but it's not really helping me when I get to those really hard multisyllabic words in upper grade levels. We kind of shift away from those predictable books that really enableize pattern memorization. Those are fun books, and there's absolutely a place for them in the classroom, but not when we're explicitly teaching phonics instruction. All right, let's head to the next one. And this is teaching content, and that goes back to that whole knowledge or language comprehension piece. We want to remember that it is just as important as decoding. The more background knowledge and vocabulary students received, the more they're going to be able to bring to text, and the better writers they're going to become. So some things that this looks like is that we are seeing 2 or 3 weeks on a content, and we're getting a wide, diverse range of literature, social studies, and science topics. We're also seeing that these topics build on each other, and they're going to make connections with these 3-week topics within grade levels as well as across grade levels. So we're really going to help deepen that content understanding and vocabulary. What we won't see, or will kind of shift away from, is kind of just spending a limited amount of time on a topic or introducing an isolated topic that doesn't connect with other topics that we're learning in the classroom. The other thing is that we shift away from is those comprehension skills. We don't want to practice comprehension skills outside of context. So we're not going to just ask students to find the main idea of a random passage. Instead, it's going to have to do with what have we been reading, and how can we connect our comprehension skills to what we've been reading and learning about in that content. And our last shift is that we really want to make sure that we are following a clear instructional path. And that's really important because it gives us explicit guidance and structure as a teacher, but also for our students. It's really, really beneficial to have that path in order to teach reading efficiently. It also gives every single student the support they need right now without waiting for intervention. So students get that help in the moment because we're using all of those scaffolds that we've talked about. You'll know that it's science of reading if there's an obvious path. It's not a little bit here and there, but it's going in an order that makes sense. And ideas and concepts and skills are building upon one another. You're also going to understand the purpose of every single component that you're teaching, and you're going to have clear guidance on how to implement each one of those components effectively. What it's not is kind of a choose your own adventure. You know, I'm going to pull from here because I really like bears, and then I'm going to pull from here because it's cute. You know, I'm not pulling and doing a lot of different things. Instead, I'm really focused on the one path that I have. And so that's pretty much what we are moving away from. So that was a lot of information in a very, very short amount of time. So what questions can I answer for you?
So I got a couple of questions. The best way to say this, how does this blend with what we're doing right now in the classroom? How are the teachers doing that?
Sure. So I know that you are using UFly for your foundational skills. And so that's a program that is going to teach phonics systematically. So I can answer that part of that question for you. I am unfamiliar with what you would be doing then to fill the rest of those pieces of the rope. For instance, the knowledge building, the vocabulary, as well as fluency. Once we're learning those foundational skills, how are we making sure that we are connecting those to text that is 100% aligned to UFly? And I don't know what materials you're using, so it's hard for me to answer that.
So in answer to that question, our phonemic awareness piece, we're using Haggerty. And the district started that about 2 to 3 years ago. We added UFly this year to address phonics. Our core curriculum, our benchmark curriculum is a balanced literacy approach, which is the approach that she's specifically mentioning we need to get away from. So we have been working with TNTP to develop the unit plans that are more rigorous and more aligned to what we would want to see within a science of reading program, even though we still have outdated materials and do not have curriculum adoption for ELA for 2 more years. So there is good literature within those stories, but we're using them a little differently than what the original curriculum had intended.
Seems a little bit like we have multiple things going on with the same thing.
Yes,
So
we are plugging holes.
Okay, so is this supposed to culminate all of that together eventually, or?
Yes. We started our discussion with Amplify because our office is starting to investigate which curriculums that we want to look at. Because we always have a teacher committee that, makes the final decision, but we're trying to vet for them which curriculums have gone through the process to become more well aligned to science of reading and meet the expectations of rigor and foundational literature, structured literacy, foundational skills that we want in front of our kids. So we want to have a good list that we put in front of teachers for their review in 1 year so that they can make a final decision by the end of that 2-year period.
Okay.
But you're very much right. The things that we've been
Okay.
talking about are plugging holes in a program that we know is not aligned to science of reading.
It seems like I know as a teacher, you keep getting new things every year, and it seems like some of it's redundant and some of it's not. And I know it's frustrating as a teacher when we throw them new things and they're trying to make new with everything else and figure this out. A lot of what she's talking about here, I did when I taught. I thought they're great. And so we did a lot of the stuff here, and I understand the balanced literacy approach. That's what I was taught in college to teach. And so how to get kids to learn. So I understand the phonemic awareness side of things and all that's going on here, and you answered that question further in the presentation, but I guess I just don't like throwing more and more things at the teachers every year. If we can figure out
Correct.
how we can culminate this and refine it so that teachers are only having to deal with one thing, it's a lot, as they're continuing to learn and deal with new things. So that's my comment on that. I'm assuming the program has a part where you deal with words that are not necessarily following the phonemic awareness patterns and all of that. There's a section of that. Okay. And so as a curriculum team, curriculum council looked at all this and they're okay with all this as well.
Well, the balanced literacy approach was approved by Curriculum Council 5 years ago,
Okay.
which is really before the shifts in science of reading became such a big issue. So yes, it went through Curriculum Council, but our knowledge base on science of reading was not what it is now when it was approved. Yes, we absolutely could have waited 2 more years to adopt a program that had phonemic awareness and phonics in it, but it really wouldn't have been fair to our kids to wait 2 years to get those skills in place that they really need to be successful readers. And so, yeah, we've asked a lot of teachers, but we also have given them a scripted program that is fairly easy to follow. And, you know, one of the considerations we have as we're looking at other curriculum's adoption in 2 years is some of them allow you to only take the literature piece so that we could keep UFly and Haggerty in place, because our data coming out of those programs is getting better. So if we continue to see the progress with it that we're hoping to see, then we may keep those pieces in place and then just adopt the literature piece of an alternate program that would be our core piece.
My questions.
Heather, you kind of touched on it, but you know, we've had several board reports of our schools coming in and our reading success has been growing and continues to grow. Do you think this program will be additive to that, or? We've been having good success, I guess is what I'm saying, in the last 2 to 3 years.
We're not presenting a program for purchase tonight. This is more just informational, because over the next couple of years, as we're working to adopt a new ELA curriculum and when we're summarizing data, we just want to make sure that you understand what all those terms mean so that you can be fully informed to, you know, make a decision as well. So this was more just informational tonight for you to help increase your understanding of the science of reading. Yes, Amplify is a publisher. We currently purchase our science curriculum from them, but they are one of the companies that we are looking at for ELA as well. And they did have, they had or were willing to share some knowledge on science of reading, had supporting materials that were available, and we felt like this would be a good resource to kind of get that information in front of you. As for our reading success, ELA success, yes, we're seeing progress and we want to continue that progress. And any program that we adopt, we really hope is going to continue that. I mean, really where we have seen great gains this year, because we're getting ready to summarize some data for administrators that are coming back this week, is our kindergarten. Because our kindergartners, this is our first group of kindergartners that have had all the right pieces in place from day one. And we saw 64% of kids above benchmark in kindergarten early reading, and that's really good numbers for us. So that's about 10% better than it was this time last year. So yes, we absolutely want to continue that success. And so we're looking for that final piece of our core curriculum to align to that science of reading. But, you know, what we're doing with benchmark and getting those essential questions and rigorous questions in front of kids is to try to use those curriculum materials in a better way than what a balanced literacy approach would.
So in the past, I've heard people mention to me things like when we talk about students with dyslexia and methods of teaching to students with dyslexia, and teaching methods that work best for students with dyslexia are also effective teaching methods to any student. But in the traditional,
the traditional teaching methods of reading don't always, or don't work well with students with dyslexia. Can you talk a little bit about the science of reading, and is that at all applicable to that conversation?
I think a lot of the research that came out of this was what they were learning about students with dyslexia. So the guided reading approach that she talked about, the 3 cueing method, is get a predictable text, put pictures in it that are going to help kids figure out what that word is. They don't have to actually read, they have to guess. And if you cue them to look at the beginning sound, maybe look at the ending sound, use context, use pictures to figure out words instead of to work on sounding them out and breaking them into pieces. So, what we're doing is trying to get to that, how to break a word down, break it into pieces, sound it out so that they're actually reading and not just guessing better. So, and they may be able to, our Amplify reps may be able to elaborate on that more, but I think a lot of the research that we have on the science of reading came out of work in preparation or understanding of students with dyslexia.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The science of reading absolutely addresses students who have not just dyslexia, but any special needs, are English language learners. It addresses equity for all students. And so when we talk about those scaffolds, and we talk about routines, and we talk about structure and that explicit instruction, and the moving from most simple to most complex skills in a very systematic way. Those are all strategies that are absolutely proven through science of reading research to help all students, including those with dyslexia, EL, IEPs, all of those different pieces. So that's a very high level answer, but yes, you are absolutely correct.
I'll just jump in on the kind of the Kansas connection. I'm your local representative for Amplify. I live in Wichita. The Kansas state legislature just passed legislation around requiring teachers to have a background in structured literacy. And so when we say science of reading is structured literacy. So when you hear those terms, they can somewhat be interchanged. So it's something that, and all of that did come out of the need for more, supports for dyslexia. That's where that came out of. So it is all very tied in very closely to that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Not so much question, just a comment. I'm glad to see the kind of switch back going, because I think education, we kind of went away from phonemic awareness and that for years, and we found out that maybe that wasn't the best thing, and I'm glad to see the switch is coming back, so I think it's important.
Yeah. And I think our students are going to be better for it, but it has definitely been a steep learning curve with letters. UFly, Haggerty, it has been a lot of things in front of teachers. And we have tried to get, one thing at a time in front of teachers. But in fairness to our kids too, we really do have to push, because the longer we wait, the more kids we have go through that don't have good foundation.
Just one more thing, if that's all right. So one thing, I know we've talked a lot about the one side of the rope, which is that, decoding and learning to read, but the other side is just as important. And that's a piece that I know that, you've got UFly for that one side, but the background knowledge, the comprehension, all of that is just as important. There was a study done where students were asked to read a passage about baseball. Kids who had a high knowledge of baseball, but low reading scores, outperformed students who had a low knowledge of baseball and a high reading ability. And that is an example of why having the knowledge, having the background knowledge is as important as as decoding. And so when you're looking at programs, you really want to look at, do they have, that's why we focus so much on, the listening comprehension piece. That listening comprehension is so important because the students can understand so much more than they can read. And this by, working with your own students and children.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item H, unfinished business. H1, the Board of Education is asked to discuss options for the district's property and casualty insurance. Jessica Nothern and Trent Speck from Iron Insurance.
So if you remember last meeting, we kind of started a conversation on the options that we have for our property and casualty between EMC and going into the pool. So we've asked Trent Speck to come because he's got a lot more knowledge than I do. And he's got a slideshow that he'll work through, and then we'll be available to answer any questions that you have.
Hello, board. Thank you again for having me. My name is Trent Speck with Iron Insurance, formerly Keller Leopold. First off, thank you guys for the business over the last 50 plus years. As I was talking to Doug recently, I think it was 50 years ago that we partnered with USD-457. Thank you again, board, for all that you do. It's a thankless job. So I watched a little bit of the board meeting last week just to kind of prepare for this week, and Jessica asked me a couple questions, and I thought we could answer them as we go, and I just kind of presented a slideshow, if that's okay, if we kind of go through that. My goal isn't to sway you one way or another. The insurance marketplace is kind of a dumpster fire right now, as we like to call it. It's very hectic. I want to just give you the kind of the background of why that is, just a short reason why. And then we'll get into more of the school insurance and kind of more specific to USD 457. So the insurance marketplace, like I said, is a dumpster fire. There's a perfect storm. So there's a lot of reason why, and I could give you a million excuses and a million reasons why, but this is kind of the top reasons. Inflation, everyone's kind of using that as an excuse one way or another right now, but it's real in the insurance marketplace. There was a cost of goods that went skyrocketed after COVID. It was hard to get materials. That has came down, as we've seen, in the cost of construction, but at the same time, on building materials, but the rising cost of wages has kind of stayed there. I mean, you got to pay your workers more, employees more. I'm sure USD 457 is struggling with that overall too, of saying, hey, where can we get good help? Profitability, there's been a number of severity and frequency. I'm not a meteorologist, so I'm not going to say, hey, the weather patterns or the weather changing, anything like that, and I would be a fool to. But I do know that insurance has paid out more over the last 3 years. So 3 of the top 5 years that they've paid out have been the last 3 years. And then 2023 isn't looking good as the numbers come in. 2024, we had a hurricane at record time this year. So that's kind of contributing to that. And then kind of all encompasses into what you call reinsurance uncertainty. So a lot of these carriers, whether it's Farm Bureau, Shelter, State Farm, or carriers that we partner with, EMC, Nationwide, Travelers, all of them go by reinsurance. So what reinsurance is a stop loss. So in the state of Kansas, we have one carrier that said that their stop loss in the state of Kansas went from 10 million in 2022 to 20 million in 2023 to 60 million. So they had to carry $60 million of cash for a big storm that happens in Kansas, where 2 years ago it was 10 million. So that's kind of what is eating people up. There's less markets for reinsurance for these carriers to go buy. So they're putting it back on the carriers and they're putting it back on the consumers. So what does this all mean? All of them together is what is called a hard market. So a hard market is simply it averages, it's kind of like the stock market. It's a soft market for 10 years and a hard market for 4 years. This is kind of unprecedented. This is kind of the worst it's ever been by far, when it's bang, 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 years consecutive. So a hard market simply means that there's less competition, there's different requirements, more requirements. Next slide, sorry. Restricted coverages, more disciplined underwriting. I had one insurance business, a commercial business that they renewed on May 19th. We didn't find coverage until May 18th. That's how severe it was. And we're independent at Keller Label / Iron. So we have a number of unlimited markets that we can check. And it was a risk that had no losses over the last 5 years. And it took us to the day before to find insurance. So there's less competition between carriers. They restrict what they write. A soft market, lower insurance premiums, broader coverages, underwriting criteria is a little bit looser, so more supply demand. So the reason I tell you all that is school insurance in the state of Kansas, there's really only 2 options. There's really EMC and the pool. Everything outside of that, we're going what you call E&S, excess and surplus, and it's going to be double or triple times as much as what we're currently paying. And that's not what we want because it's going to be restrictive on coverage too. So Iron Insurance is made up of really 2 entities. We've merged with others, or we brought on others as time has passed, but really is Keller Leopold out of Garden City and Assurance Partners out of Salina. Keller Leopold represented EMC. Assurance Partners represented the pool. So when we merged with them, they're letting us take some of these school districts that we have on the west side and move them into the pool if they want to. And like I said, my role today is not to convince you one way or another. I do have 2 and 2. I represent 5 school districts. I had 2 that moved and 2 that stayed. So no pressure. No, but anyways, there's really 2 options. EMC has done a great job. They've been in the school business for a long time. They're out of Des Moines, Iowa. They've stayed competitive when other school districts or other school carriers have gotten out. 30 years ago, there was 6 or 7 carriers that wrote school insurance. Now there's 2. So they've taken some big hits over the last couple of years. You might have heard of the one that happened, a fire here in western Kansas. That was arson. It was a $14 million claim. There was another claim that happened a little west of here. That was $3.5 million claim that happened last September or October-ish. So they've taken a lot of hits. They've lost money 13 out of the last 15 years or something like that, somewhere around those numbers. So they've tried to stay competitive, try to stay lower on the premiums, but they kind of keep getting kicked in the teeth. So they made some radical changes last September, October, and we got the approval in February to look at the pool here in western Kansas for some of the school districts. So that's why I worked with Jessica and try to get you guys a quote or a proposal. It's not something that you have to vote on tonight, but like I said, just inform you. So KICS is what I'll call it, Kansas School Insurance Pool. Started in 2015, 10 schools. 2023, there was 97 schools. I put what is a max because I'm going to cover that later. Added more schools of 7-1. There was a lot of schools that went from EMC to KICS. Like I said, in our organization, we took 8 to 10 schools there that we handle inside our organization. And we handle around between our Salina office and all here in Southwest Kansas. I think we insure around 35 to 40 schools total out of the 300 in Kansas. So we represent a lot. So EMC, I just want to talk about EMC. I have a couple slides to kind of tell you the pros and cons of EMC, what they're doing, talk about the pros and cons of the school pool, and then kind of answer some questions that you guys have had from the last school board meeting. So EMC, they've made some big changes. So they did have a per occurrence deductible. They went to now per building deductible. They went to a percentage deductible, and they also went to ACV, which is actual cash value. So the people that don't know, I'll just talk about it because insurance isn't something that you guys might handle every day. There's replacement cost and there's actual cash value. So replacement cost is if you build a house back in 2000 and it was built for $100,000, the replacement cost on that now, if there was a claim, would probably be closer to maybe $150,000, $200,000 if you try to build that exact same house. So a tornado comes through, wipes it out, that house might be $200,000 to replace, minus your deductible, whatever that is. Actual cash value works opposite. It takes depreciation into consideration. So that $100,000 house, it might be it might be worth 200,000, but you might only be getting $120,000 back or $80,000 back. Just kind of depends on the condition of the house and how much it depreciates over that 24 years. So EMC, and that's pretty drastic. So when you're talking about $500,000 or $400,000 difference in cost of, that is a big consideration when you're talking what's the difference. So some pros about EMC. They are less expensive. They're $400,000 less expensive, or $500,000 compared to the school pool. They're trying to make it work. They're trying to be profitable, but at the same time be competitive. They know schools. They know the risks of schools. They had at one time most of the schools across Kansas. I don't think, like I said, there's 300 or about 300 school districts in the state of Kansas, is my understanding, and I think they insured the majority of them. The cons is that they did go to a percent deductible. So, for example, the high school here is insured at $113 million. I think it was built 10 to 11, 12 years ago, 2011-ish, and they built it for $94 million. And that's counting the concrete. You wouldn't probably have to replace the concrete if a tornado came. But anyways, $113 million. So if before insurance kicks in, now what you have currently with EMC, you have a 1% deductible. You would have to have $1 million claim or $1.1 million claim before insurance kicks in on wind or hail. Wind or hail. So big hailstorm comes through. I think the square footage of the high school, if I remember right, is around 240,000, 250,000 square feet. I could be wrong there. So you're looking at a big exposure there. So currently the high school is good because it's only 12 years old. It's inside that 15 years. Actual cash value on the buildings are anything on 16 to 35. So your Horace Good is a little bit older. And I brought a list. And then they're not going to offer any building coverage for any roofs that are over 35 years old. And that's kind of their stance. They're pretty much saying, hey, we want these schools to take and make an improvement plan over the course. Like, we just don't want them to pay for a new roof, or we have to pay for a new roof is what EMC is saying. So KICS, Kansas Insurance Cooperative for Schools, formerly KERM. Started in 2015, and this is kind of just a background. There's 10 school districts that kind of made the jump. Now there's 97 as of last year before 7-1. I don't know how many schools that they took in at 7-1. And the reason they go 7-1 to 7-1 is because they go over to London and they negotiate. And I'll explain more of that here in a sec. But 2015, they had 16,000 students. Last year, they insured 178,000 students. Total insured property was 648 million. Last year was 9.8 billion. Some pros about KICS is they're going to offer replacement costs, no matter what the age of the roof is. So that's a big deal when you're talking about millions of dollars difference. Potentially, if you have a claim at Horace Good and the roof is 30 years old, well, replacement cost on that compared to actual cash value is a big difference. Superior deductible is a $250,000 deductible is what they're offering USD-457. $250 per occurrence. So if the high school and the middle school was hit, it would just be a $250,000 deductible on wind hail. Diversification when it comes to carriers. So it's like a Tetris. Whenever you're talking about a large property, and this is what a lot of bigger commercial businesses do. When I'm talking big commercial, I'm talking about 1,000+ employees, all under one building, etc. Not one carrier is going to take on all that risk. They're going to say, hey, we're going to diversify. So that's what it looks like on this property is there's, this carrier might take the first 20 million if there's a claim, and they might take 50% of that 20 million. This carrier might take 30%, and they're only going to take the first 10 million. So it's kind of a Tetris working the way up to the insured values. $250,000 wind hail deductible on occurrence. The cons are their higher premiums. They're more in line with probably where they should be. There are higher deductibles that aren't winter hail related. I think that was a question last week, was what happens if it's not winter hail? Currently, you have 25,000. So that Gertrude Walker that was hit from the blast a couple weeks ago, or probably around a month ago now, the deductible was 25,000. That would move to 75,000. Same thing on water claims. Water damage, we had a big freeze where we had a couple schools that we insured got hit with a water claim when it got to like -47 and pipes froze. The water damage deductible through EMC was 25,000, with kicks is 150,000. So they're giving a lot on the wind hail deductible, but they're taking it on the other deductibles. There is a 3-year commitment, and the reason for that is they don't want schools jumping ship on the cons. Deductible buy down, that was a question. So a deductible buy down, I kind of just Googled it just for simple reasons, but deductible buy down is just what it sounds like, is you're buying down your deductible. So if you have $100,000 deductible and you want to buy it down, there's, say, the 25,000, whatever you're comfortable with, there's $75,000 difference there. So if you're saving $9,000, for example, you're thinking, well, I could go 8 years or 8.5 years before it's profitable. Am I going to have a claim in that 8 years that I'm going to have to pay out on a property claim? And that's kind of the rationale, is what you look at. So for USD-457, we actually did look for a deductible buy down last October, coming into this 2024 January. And that was when Colleen was still here. So Jessica wasn't as familiar with that, but I did kind of send her, I don't know if I sent you the emails or not, but I did say that we talked about it. So we did look at a deductible buy down. The problem with it is right now, currently, we're insuring $411 million for USD-457 with all the buildings. I think there's 25 different locations that we're insuring, whether it's a bus barn, maintenance building, all the different schools. So we're at $411 million that we're insuring at USD-457. So you're looking at a $4 million deductible if everything was hit on a wind hail. So to buy that down from a 1% down to 500,000 would be an additional 437,000 each year. To buy it down to $1 million deductible would be 362,000. So I'm sorry, can you go back? So we did look at that. Colleen at the time said that she didn't think it made sense. And I kind of agreed with her that the risk reward probably isn't there quite yet. In the meantime, I did know that we were kind of working on the back end to look at another option through KICS. So, and I did want to say, and I didn't put this as a con on EMC, but it's 1% per building with EMC, what we currently have. So if the high school is hit and the middle school is hit, you would have two separate deductibles. You would have $1 million, 1.1 million at the high school, and you have 469,000 at the middle school or school. So, and then you get into the scoreboard, you would have a scoreboard deductible or bleachers or concession stand. It's per building, not per location or per occurrence. I think there was a question last week about property claims. I brought the property, what we call loss runs, just the property side. And EMC really loves Garden City because Garden City has been really, really good when it comes to claims wise. That you're at 7% loss ratio, which usually insurance accounts for anywhere from 30 to 50% is what they're kind of thinking on the property side. So we're well below that. It seems like, and you know this, if you're a farmer here, that it always splits Garden City, it seems like, which, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx us, but that's a good thing when it comes to hail. We really haven't had a huge hailstorm since 2008. And what we're dealing with now is a lot of our carriers are saying, hey, we don't want to insure this home because it's over 15 years old on the roof. So they're saying, we're going to pass on this. We have a lot of carriers that are doing that right now. So 2008, I think we paid out 1.3 million, or EMC did, not us, but EMC did. That, I don't know what that cost would be today because the cost of commercial roofing has went up tremendously. As some of you may or may not know, is kind of crazy. I think it's $400 a square, and a square is a 10 by 10 on a commercial roof, I believe. So a school out west of us had a $3.5 million claim that I kind of hinted at in October of 2023 or September. And their school is about 1.5 times the average of an elementary school that we have here, or probably very comparable to an intermediate center that we have here. So if you're thinking about what the cost of replacement is. So what can we do to continue to the cost? We can't really do anything about the property rates. They're just kind of going out of control. We have been working with Drew and Jessica and Melinda on the risk management side when it comes to work comp, and we're making some great strides there. I think that's the easiest way to curve some cost, right? I mean, we're still above average when it comes to our work comp mod, but something that we can continue to do and hopefully continue to make track. You're talking about $50,000 or $100,000, and that's a lot different when you're talking about 500, but every little penny adds up. So I know that was a lot, so thank you again for having me. I'm sure there's a couple of questions.
When's our deadline to review?
So you can go in whenever. They were pretty transparent on that you don't have to make a decision today or anything like that crazy. So what you're paying right now with EMC is 1-1 to 1-1. The deal with that is we don't know what EMC is going to do because I've heard that they've had a lot of losses this year. So stability going forward, that's where I'm scared of, is I don't know if EMC is going to be a player in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. You know, I don't know if EMC is going to say, well, we're tired of getting kicked in the teeth. I don't know if we want to do this anymore. And at that time, do we try to get in kicks? You know, you're going to have a mass where you're going to have 160 different schools trying to get into kicks at that time. And they're going to say, well, we're good. We're only going to take what we want or who we want. We're not going to take any more. They made it abundantly clear to us at Iron Insurance that they're only going to take so many. They're not going to insure all 300 school districts in the state of Kansas. I had one school district that did not get an offer from Kicks, so they couldn't go, but they made it known to me if they did get an offer, they were moving as soon as. I had another school district that said, we almost want to self-insure everything. We don't even want to pay property insurance. And I thought that was a little radical, but at the same time, I said, hey, I get it. You know, when you're a small school district, you have, 120 kids in your school, and you have to pay a lot of money for insurance. You can look at it and say, well, do we really need it or do we want to save it? They ended up taking it because they didn't want to go without insurance, but they did not go to Kicks.
Did you say the state pool Kicks, right, and EMC are the only two carriers offering policies in school districts in Kansas?
As of now, yeah.
Do you see that changing in the future?
I don't know if government's going to have to step in or not, to be honest. It's tough foreseeing that because EMC has lost money. And, you saw that there were 6 carriers at one time, 30 years ago, and now there's 2 really. And Kicks is kind of gaining traction and EMC is kind of losing traction. So I can't really answer that, but I just do know that you're talking about $411 million that you're insuring for $680,000. You're saying, well, I don't like that ratio because one big storm, I'm out forever. There's no way I can catch up on that. So there's a lot of carriers that are just backing off property in general. They're just saying, we don't want property at this time.
On the EMC deductible, you said 1% deductible. Is that 1% of the insured value of the building or 1% of the claim?
1% of the building.
Of the building. The insured value of the building?
Yep.
So okay. So it doesn't, the 1% deductible is not in relation to the value of the claim. It's 1% of the dollar amount that we're insuring the property for.
Yeah. Yeah. So the high school, for example, 113 million is what we're insuring the property for. Yeah. you're self-insuring pretty much 1.1 million. Up until that 1.1 million, you're paying out of pocket.
Okay.
After that, that's when insurance kicks in.
Thank you.
And that's per occurrence,
Per building.
per building. Yeah.
Per building. So if the high school is hit, and then the track, and then the concession stand, and the scoreboard, you all have 1% of those. And the scoreboard might be $30,000, so you have a $300 deductible, but like I said, it kind of all adds up. I think the concession stand we have insured around $1 million for that building. I don't know if I think that's pretty accurate, so could be off on that number, but so you have $10,000 deductible right there.
And on the pool, if all those schools in the northeast area got hit, it's $250,000 deductible.
Yep, $250,000 deductible.
Are all of our buildings insurable, or are they?
There's a couple that are definitely on the cusp of being uninsurable. There's some, they don't look just at the roof. They're gonna look at electrical, they're gonna look at HVAC, they're gonna look at plumbing. They're gonna say, hey, where are these all at? So Colleen and myself, I think we got with Shane and we did these supplementals last October or maybe November. It was, like I said, it was kind of a rush because EMC, they said, well, we're gonna make these big changes in a short amount of time and we need all these papers filled out. So Colleen and I and Shane worked together and we got the updates, but
Do you remember what buildings those were?
I brought a list. I did bring a list. So the high school year built was 2012. Everything is new in there. The other kind of schools I'm kind of scared about would be Horace Good. 1993 was a roof update and 1999 was a Horace Good music. So they're kind of coming up, and that's 31 years. So they're kind of coming up on that 35 years where they're gonna say, nope, no more. And what their threshold is the roof has to be 75% new. That's where they're saying has to be at least 75% replaced. I'm more than happy to send you this.
I think they got this in the middle
Okay,
with Mike, yeah,
okay.
It's just based on roof,
Yeah.
right, yeah, so they got this, they just don't have it like if it was electrical or HVAC or anything like that.
And there, like I said, there's a couple that are right on that cusp. Garfield would be an example of right on that cusp of, and they kind of guessed on it because, 35 years is a long time to keep records. And so, there probably wasn't as digital back then. So going forward, I'm sure we'll have some better records.
We said 70%, I think you said new or good. Is that within that? They want to see roofs that are 70% of the roof is within that first 15-year age. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they want to see it at least, or even 35 years. They want to see 75% of it before if that makes sense, 75% of it before 35 or.
No older than.
No, 35, yes.
70% no older than 30.
Okay.
So that long-range facilities plan that Shane and Coley and everybody, you guys worked on, do you feel like that plan is in line and addresses our insurance?
I think that's great. I think what you guys did there was phenomenal. I truthfully do. And I kind of use that with my other school districts saying, hey, this is what another big school district is doing. I don't like to name names, obviously, but I think it's great. You might have to adjust maybe a little bit on maybe the buildings, saying, hey, well, let's make sure this building's updated on the roof size. But yes, that's something that we can take back if you want to stay with EMC and say, listen, they got a long range plan. They're going to do this over the next 5 years. They're not quite there yet. And that's where I can come in or our firm come in and let's negotiate this. Let's make this insurable. They have a plan in 2026 to address this building.
Yes, so when would we need to make a decision? What's kind of our drop dead date for?
They said that you can make a decision, whenever. You renew 1/1. So if you wanted to wait till 1/1 and then they would prorate from 1/1 to 7/1 if you wanted to make the jump to kicks. If you wanted to renew with EMC, it stays 1/1 anyways.
So if we jump to the kicks or to the pool, whatever, Does that happens immediately, or we still ride out the rest of the year?
Either, right?
Yeah, however you want to do it. If you want to say, hey, we want to bind coverage effective 9/1, we can say, okay, well, we'll get everything that we need to through Jessica by 9/1. Everything signed, delivered, and then what we'll do is we'll notify EMC, and they'll prorate it back from 9/1 to.
My next
Well,
question is, would we get any funds back if we did that?
If, so the KICS is a 3-year contract, correct? EMC just, is it only option for a 1-year contract, or are there options to do longer?
Is year to year, and with EMC being uncertainty going forward on the stability factor, I think that's what they're gonna lean towards anyways. I don't think we can ask for, hey, we're gonna do a 3-year contract.
Have there been school districts that EMC is non-renewed?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
That's the thing also with KICS, is KICS is not gonna non-renew you. So if you have 2 big claims or 3 big claims in a short amount of time, they're not gonna say, well, you're out. They might charge you for it, but you're not gonna be out.
Hey.
Paid state.
So if we renew with EMC at the first of the year, when do we start conversations as far as if they will renew us, or what our plan moving forward will be?
So they're required 60 days in advance to notify you by law. So we really work on it 120 days out. That's kind of our guidelines in-house, is we want to get a jump on this. So whatever you need, we're going to work from 120 days to that 30-day span and try to get pricing 30 days out. And that's kind of our goal as an organization. So then we can let the consumer or the insured know, hey, this is where we're at.
Did you say that they were switching all of those components in the first year, or they were working on switching those changes in their EMC's program over 5 years?
Oh, they changed it this year.
It's all.
Yeah, it was effective 2024, January. So that is, yep. So they made that drastic change, kind of like I said, October, a lot of these superintendents got notified and they got kind of scared. So this is like my 10th board meeting in the last 2 months, so. But I hope it was formal or informational.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's nothing that nobody wants to hear, but it is the reality of where we're at right now, so. I do kind of feel like we're in a good place, though. I feel like we have a plan in place to kind of, we can't control the weather, but at least moving forward with some of our buildings and that of getting them up to speed better, and so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for your business.
Move on to item I, new business. Board of Education is asked to consider and approve the renewal of Howard School Perform for the dates of October 29 through October 29, 2024 to October 28, 2025. Personnel in the amount of $21,354.06. Drew?
Yeah, so we're up on Power School Perform. What Power School Perform is, it's just our online evaluation tool. They're not to be confused with our online walkthrough tool. We have walkthroughs that we do every day. Principals are out in the buildings doing walkthroughs every day. They're going in and checking on classrooms. Our instructional coaches are going in, checking on classrooms. So that's the walkthrough tool, just check-ins. It's not used in the evaluation process. And then we have the actual evaluation process. That is what we're using this for. We've used Perform for a number of years. We had My Learning Plan prior to Perform. I have never presented on it, so I just wanted to get up here and kind of explain what Perform is. Our new teachers, they get 2 formatives and 2 summatives each semester. Our veteran teachers, our 3+ teachers, they get 1 formative and 1 summative each semester. What a formative is just that individual check-in a couple times. Our principals will go in, sit down for a class period, do the evaluations based off the Kansas standards. They'll do that twice, and then they'll follow that up with a summative.
each semester, and that summative is kind of the overview. This is how you're doing this semester. All that stuff is tracked and kept in records, kept in secure files. And we use PowerSchool Perform to do that. Like I said, we've used it for a number of years. Our principals are happy with it. Our staff is happy with it. It's user-friendly. There are other things out there, but currently we use Power Learning for our application tracking. We use it for our evaluation process. We use it to store records. We use it to do our professional development. So it's kind of Power Learn kind of houses a lot of different things for us. And this is just one of those pieces. Thank you. It'll be on consent agenda at the next meeting for your approval. If you have questions before then, let me know.
Move on to item I2, building needs assessment. Dr. Rock.
Evening. Tonight I'll be presenting the process followed to complete the building needs assessment and how we aggregated that data. So to begin, we had our building principals and their leadership teams complete the building needs assessment. This was sent out in a spreadsheet in May. And they went through several topics to address their specific building needs assessments. So in this review, they reviewed student needs, State Board of Education outcomes, which includes our KISA accreditation for Garden City Public Schools. They also addressed STAR recognition, curriculum needs, educational capacities, staff needs, facility needs, family and community needs, school data, and then the high school also addressed any of their needs that they may have and other data that they may have. In November, on November 6, 2023, we also presented the CAP assessment data to the Board of Education in a presentation. So they also reviewed their building CAP assessment data as well. Through this process, this month, we put a committee of 3 principals and 4 district office administrators to review all of the school needs assessments and identified budgeting priorities. So through the assessment that the buildings completed, they had to complete a narrative summary. So that's the part that the district committee reviewed those summaries. The priorities are being presented tonight, which was the next scheduled meeting for the Board of Education. And I'll go into the summary of the priorities for the budgeting process for the 2025 fiscal year. So as we reviewed the narratives for each of the buildings, we identified some common themes. And these are listed in the highest themes that came up through all of the building needs assessments. So the first one was high quality professional development, which came up 18 times. Pay teachers for professional development outside their contract hours. That trend was mentioned 13 times. Continue the focus on the science of reading, which we heard a presentation today on the science of reading. That came up 7 times. Then we had a tie for the next 2, which is retention and recruitment of high qualified staff, with 6 times been mentioned. And resources and support for tier 2 and tier 3 interventions, also mentioned 6 times. The next one was social emotional learning resources, which was mentioned 5 times. ESL strategies was also mentioned 5 times. And then efforts to decrease absenteeism was mentioned 4 times. I'm gonna go ahead and give you the other three that came up. 3 times we had tier 1 instruction mentioned, and that is a huge focus across the district, tier 1 instruction. We've mentioned that several times as well. That was mentioned 3 times. And then we had a tie for two times being mentioned across several, community engagement, PLCs, professional learning communities, data analysis, professional development for paraprofessionals, testing culture, training on district vision and mission, and a need for common assessments. And then the last trend that I'm going to mention was mentioned 1 time, but we had about 3 of them, collective teacher efficacy, alignment of resources, and math. So those were all the themes that came from the analysis, the aggregate of the building needs assessment, and the ones that are mentioned on the slides were the top ones. So the next steps is first to take any input from the Board of Education. And if there's any questions, you can submit them to Dr. Dominguez. And this needs assessment process will be part of the budget adoption, which is coming up on September the 9th, 2024. Do you have any questions?
I don't have a question, more just a comment, but so being on negotiations this year, I think we're all kind of trying to row in the same direction because several things on here with the high quality professional development, pay, recruitment, retention, those are all big parts of the negotiations team. So I think we're all on the same page now. We just got to make it happen.
Yes. So this will be taken into consideration for the budget as well. Jessica, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I don't think so. You'll just have to, when you adopt the budget, just recognize that it's taken into consideration.
Questions? Thanks, Doctor.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item I3, discussion of the new policy IIBFR, acceptable use policy on the use of artificial intelligence or AI. Stacy. We'll wait for you.
Hey, thanks. It's a little moving around. Is that happening to you?
Questions, we were asked, Josh asked us about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, I think, to go ahead and look at the policy we presented several months ago that we tabled. And then through that process of looking that over again, we've kind of adapted that. We've used quite a few resources to come up with this more principles and beliefs of AI use. I still think we'll need a teacher document that outlines, these are the acceptable things we'll allow, that supports them in the classroom. Lots of the resources we looked over leave that up to the teacher. I don't know that we want to go that route, but maybe we could give them some guiding principles that, we want to make sure these things are included when we're dealing with the actual classroom experience of kids using it. But what was presented to you in the packet today for policy was that kind of overarching document that kind of outlines where we feel like we should be. Again, we've used a number of national resources to kind of culminate this document. We've looked at other schools about our size. AI in Education is a huge organization that are helping districts do these exact same things, training district leaders, whole districts on, and partnering with schools on this very topic. And so we looked at their resources as well. And then we just began kind of adapting some of those things to meet our own needs. So I think there were some questions that Josh said we needed to discuss.
So, Mr. President, I just wanted to say thank you. I requested that this come off the consent agenda and then just be able to be discussed as a board. I know that AI in schools is fairly new. I know you guys have put a lot of time and effort into trying to work on a policy, because as a board, we've asked for a policy on this. We've kind of asked for guardrails, a little bit of trying to manage AI. So I read the policy. I know there's some good things about it. There's some things that concern me, but I know in the beginning of AI, we kind of discussed, how we're going to block platforms like that from students being able to go to a chat GPT and create a document on their cell phone and then through Google, load it to their tablet, turn it in. How are we going to manage that? How are we going to keep the academic integrity of making sure our students don't learn how to just run a device, but actually learn to do the rigor and to do the work? Our attorney had mentioned a program. I wrote it down here, but it's called Turnitin, I believe.
Turned it in.
Turned it in, yeah. So it was a program that she has used where assignments can be ran through that and her area of expertise, and it can let the teacher know that if AI had been used to create that document. I don't see anything in that in here. So anyway, I just had some concerns about it. I wanted to talk about it. The other concern that I have with it, obviously we're updating policies tonight. We asked this policy to come off. One of the policies that we updated tonight was policy IKI, lesson plans. And I feel like if we adopt the policy as is written, we'll be breaking that policy. Basically where everything has to be policies, but basically our policy of IKI is that each teacher shall develop and maintain and follow lesson plans which conform to the approved curriculum. I feel like there's gaps in the artificial intelligence policy to where teachers would have latitude to create additional supporting curriculum that may not be board approved.
So a couple of things in regards to Turnitin. There's been issues with products like that. I have not used Turnitin specifically, but I know it's in that product category. The issues that arise from that is the AI learns what they're looking for. And so they've had trouble. Most of those companies that went into business with that kind of software turned them off because it became unreliable. Because the AI was then writing the descriptions and the things that it was writing to avoid being detected. So I think the part that we've looked at as far as an overall policy is just that I have it on plagiarism and Cheeto. Can you pull that up, Jason? This is kind of in the first, not the whole first paragraph, but kind of the actual policy piece. Higher standards of academic integrity in all forms of student work. Our curriculum will include lessons on proper citation of generated content. We'll develop clear guidelines on acceptable use. That's the piece I said that I think we need to go that step further with that, those particulars. Regular sessions with staff on, and our students on the importance of original thinking and honest and academic practices. There are some things that we'll have to look at as far as teaching students the right way to use it and the wrong way to use it. Are kids going to try? Probably. They probably are already doing it. I read an interesting article from the University of Stanford who did a study on cheating, and the focus was how much has it increased in the last 3 years when AI is really developed versus times before that. And what they found is that the cheating has not increased with students being able to now use AI to write assignments, to do those things. They studied, I believe I want to say it was mostly upper grades where, because that's where more AI was less, not secondary, but post-secondary education. Because that's where they kind of started really diving in faster. K-12 schools did. But they've shown that cheating hasn't increased there at those levels. It's remained steady. Some of that's because students who probably want to cheat are going to find ways to do that, whether it's AI or whether they, I can tell you in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, Apple's going to release their new stuff and it's going to have AI built into it. Our Microsoft computers that we updated this summer have it, there's a button right on the screen for it. Google's built it in. So those are pieces where we're going to have to train kids that appropriate use. Even in their calculator, Apple's new calculator, you can just start writing out math problems. They'll just start solving them in your handwriting. And so how do we incorporate that? That's going beyond the calculator. Now we're answering the problems as we type them. And so how do we address that with our kids versus, what we want them doing in real practice? How do we work with math teachers? That's been around for a long time. There's been programs for 10 years that will solve your math problems for you without the student doing any work. And so I don't think we saw a huge increase in cheating there. We had to teach our teachers to adapt to that being a reality. They could just download an app and put the problem in and get the answer. So, knowing that they can't use their phones on the test, curb that, right? They have to learn the material. I think those things would be true this year as well. And so I think for us, it's just, this policy is more that overarching piece of what we believe AI can do for our schools, what we need to do to protect our kids with privacy and security. That's kind of on our tech side end. How do we train teachers? How do we use transparency with students? Academic, the piece I think that fits with what you were talking about, our instructional, is the academic integrity piece. Clear guidelines will be established for acceptable use of AI tools in academic work. Strategies for detecting AI generated content students' missions will be developed. Those are those discussions on pieces that I think will come down the road. I just think we need to have something in place to guide us to those directions. I think we need to get some other stakeholders involved as well. Besides just our department and Tyler and I doing research. I think it's beneficial to have some other people around that table as we develop those particular pieces. There is a specifics piece in here regarding instruction. It's at the top, integration with curriculum. All AI tools will be thoughtfully incorporated in our educational framework. Main education goals, maybe that's the one you read already. All AI applications will be aligned with our district curriculum and specific learning objectives. So again, that's more guidance for the teacher than it is for the student. And we want them to know that the curriculum is the curriculum. And that's what we need to be teaching. And how do we take this as an enhancement and use it to help our kids not only use it correctly, but learn how to use it so that they don't get out into the real world and now they don't know how to use it. And they're either A, behind because they don't have any of those skills, or two, they use it inappropriately in that world, which has greater consequences than, busting them on a research paper that we could teach them, that consequence. I don't know if that answers all of those questions, John. I tried to remember them all, but I don't know if I missed
Yeah, I
some.
went through it probably pretty fast, but I guess as a board member, I'm just concerned how we continue to ensure that the board approved curriculum is being taught and that at some point, AI doesn't come in and we're using more AI than we're using the curriculum and basically at that point, like approving curriculum is meaningless, as the Board of Education if we're not really using that in the classroom. So I just want to know how you ensure the board what is the district going to do to manage it to where we know that the curriculum that's approved is what's being taught and not alternative through AI.
Yeah, and I think that comes with that professional development piece. When we're training teachers on acceptable use, there should be some acceptable use for them as well. Not just our kids. We got to train our teachers, when is it okay to write a lesson plan that still fits with the curriculum, to use it to help save you time, but how do we make sure that curriculum is in that AI plan that you created? And how do we avoid creating a plan that steps outside of that curriculum, pulls resources from places that aren't approved? It's that training piece, to bring them on board, that idea.
Yeah, so you bring up another thought that I had about AI. So you say that the teacher uses the AI to create a, part of the curriculum that is supposed to be with the curriculum, but we all know that everything that the data analysts put in the AI is not correct.
Sure.
So who's gonna vet that if they use AI and make sure that what the data coming out of AI is actual correct data for the curriculum?
We'll have to do, I think, all of the adults will have to have some responsibility in that, technology included. There's a section on bias and fairness in there, in the policy, discussing just that. How do we detect and identify things that are having bias built into them? How do we make sure that diverse perspectives are out there, that we're not just focused on one side or the other of a particular topic? When it becomes evident that that's a biased resource, then we have to step away from those. The companies are actually, not all of them, many of them are doing, the big leaders in this are doing a pretty good job of policing themselves, each other. For example, Google put out a tool, image generation. So you could type in, give me a picture of George Washington, on the, as a president or as a general. For the first 2 days, it didn't print anything out that included anybody who was white. All the people that it created, all the images that it created were of non-white folks. And so they had to shut that tool off because it got reported, and shut off and rewrite it. That was a bias built into the system with whatever programming language they did, and they turned it off because it wasn't accurate. And so those are some of the biases that I think are being worked out between the companies. There's also groups, like I said, AI for Education. That's a pretty big group. They have a pretty big voice in this world, and they're pretty quick to call out things that are inaccurate, positives and negatives of all of them, not just they have their favorites and they don't really say anything bad about those. I've read products on all of them, reviews and different things of what schools should be looking for, whether it's Claude or GPT or, all these others that are out there. That's just going to be a requirement. We're going to have to do that, because there are going to be things that pop up. Some of them are accidental. Some of them are built-in biases by who created the AI. The accidental ones are actually called hallucinations, which is an interesting factor that's just happens. They can't figure out in the program where it's happening, but it's unfactual content that's being delivered as facts, and they call it hallucinations in AI. And they're getting better at mitigating those, but they still do happen. So how do we teach people to recognize those things? We teach them to use secondary resources, right? Same way we taught them not to use the first thing that pops up at Google when they do a Google search for something. That's the most popular one because it has the most monetary value attached to it in some of their algorithms. So you have to kind of dig down through, find better facts throughout the page. Some of that's, again, just going to be training. I think we have to have a policy that says, yes, we're going to hold you to that, and we're going to work together to do that. But versus here's how we're going to do it. Right at this moment, I don't know that there's a here's how we specifically do it from what we've seen. But I think it's we are going to commit to doing it, and we'll hold people accountable to those things.
Well, I appreciate your comments. I'm just one board member. I'd love to hear the rest of the board's opinion on this and where they sit on it. But to me, I feel like this policy doesn't have enough guardrails or teeth built in it for me to prove it at the moment. And I know it's a work in progress, but that's my personal opinion.
Well, and I think that policies are only effective if they can be enforced. And because this is so ambiguous, topics, policy, everything, how are we going to enforce this policy? Are we gonna have one person that's policing all the teachers and all, the students, or the teachers are policing the students, and they're not gonna have time to do what they need to do? Yeah, it's a train wreck.
Yeah, and I think, again, I think that's gonna be an adult collaboration. There are probably some ways to block some of the AI tools that are out there, but it's gonna be more and more difficult to do that. And so just our old way of thinking of, we'll just filter that, maybe we don't want kids to have YouTube, we'll just turn it off. That's not gonna be the case with this. It's gonna be out there, they're gonna have it on their phones, if they're an older kid that has a phone. It's gonna be on all their devices. There's just not a way, really a good way to avoid that. And so, in the classroom, I think that falls on the teacher. If I'm using the tools, then I'm responsible for is making sure that my kids are turning in things that fit the requirements that we've asked them to fit. That they're citing the resources right. Maybe it's okay for them on this particular assignment to use ChatGPT to have that conversation back and forth within the learner. Then they write their own composition off of that. They still should cite that conversation that they had with AI to build that knowledge first. Lots of teachers are, that's a requirement to have those pieces built in. They turn in their prompt, they turn in the responses from GPT, they turn in the next prompt, the next question they ask. That's all in the history of those kids' devices, but in the tool they're using. And so, I think that comes down to that classroom piece. But as a district, then you're looking at our administrators equipped to see AI being used effectively in some classrooms, and are we using it ineffectively in some lesson plans that teachers are turning in? And that's going to be some training for them. Hold teachers accountable then at that level, and then obviously that makes its way up the scaffold.
Because personally, I would trust the lesson plans that one of our teachers made over something that AI made at this moment.
Hopefully that, I understand that. And I think our teachers who've been here teaching for a long time, that's absolutely true. They know the content, they know the curriculum, they know what works for their students. I think it would be beneficial to some of our younger or like our long-term subs have that history, that background, and that we do compile a list of those. I think I was telling maybe Josh or Maria and Dr. Rock, one of the two. I think there's an opportunity there to say, okay, we have all these long-term subs in science last year. Wouldn't it have been nice if we used AI with support from science teachers who got pushed out into other classrooms? What if we had them work together to write those lesson plans so that all of our teachers were doing, we could count that they were all doing the same thing. And that would have been quicker had teachers been able to do it by hand, just by themselves, absolutely. But it would have taken much longer to get to that point to have a year's worth of lesson plans. And it might have been, start with AI and then let the teachers that have the knowledge to go back and filter those, make them fit our curriculum, make them fit with what we're trying to do. So I think there's, again, it's that resource piece, not as always the, sometimes it's just that starting point to get going. But I understand your concern.
Can I make
Kind
it?
of
Good.
I kind of look at it as this way, with AI, we're trying to close the barn door now, the cows are already out. So it's not going to change the future. It is the future. I mean, that's just how it is. Trying to police it is going to be impossible because AI is smarter than what we're trying to write to catch it, and it'll learn from it. So I do see value in it. And I'm going to tell you, mark my words, in 2 years from now, we're going to be sitting here approving a curriculum for a class that they're going to teach on kids how to use AI. And it is the future. That's where we're at in our world. It's the internet all over again for some of us. But, and the thing is, okay, you hire these teachers, these kids, we're going to hire a young teacher right out of school now that had been probably using it their whole entire college career. So, it's not going to be new to them. It's going to be just how it is in education for them in the futures. You look at universities are teaching it now. They're using it. I don't know how you stop it, but it is the future. I don't think we're going to be able to police it like you want. I agree with you, and I understand what you're saying. I just don't know if that's possible already. I think it's too advanced for that. But.
So my comment was going to be, why don't we table this for now and have a group to get together to work on the verbiage a little bit. Like John, if he would serve on it, and then Dr. Rock with the professional side, and then Heather Stigman be a part of that group and just sit down and work out a little bit of that verbiage to change it up a little bit. And Robin, if you don't mind, I mean, you've some of that, I mean, we just had two of us there and then you guys can all kind of sit down and just kind of formalize that and finalize it and bring us back another copy to look at. Is that fair enough to think about?
Yeah. Just to share my thoughts, I mean, I think I echo a lot of what Randy you've said. I think when we think about AI and our students, you know, I think we need to be teaching them good digital citizenship. I think they need to be able to learn how to use it ethically and how to use it to enhance their knowledge and not create workarounds, you know. And I think this policy is definitely is in the right direction. I mean, there's a lot of these things that concerns that we've talked about that I think are addressed in this policy. I mean, I think a suggestion to get together and review it a little further and hone it is a great suggestion. I agree that without a policy in place, we have no control. And the one thing that I'd like, you know, we talk about there's a section here about continued improvement. This policy will go undergo annual review to reflect achievements of AI technology and education practices, get feedback from teachers, students, and parents. I think at least coming out of the gate, as we talk about this, like at the 1 year mark and the 2 year mark, that we actually, that we ensure that annual review takes place, and we go so far as to provide a presentation to the board at the 12-month mark. You know, go through one school year, conduct that feedback interview, and give us your thoughts. And do we need to look at a modification of the policy? Because something like this, I think what's the right policy today is probably going to look different in a couple of years as this technology continues to evolve. Yeah, might look different next week. You know, so I do think we're heading in the right direction. I don't know that we can capture everything out of the chute here to make it a perfect policy. But I definitely appreciate your concern, and I like the idea of working on this a little bit farther, but I would strongly encourage us as a board to adopt a policy around AI.
Anything else? Thanks, Casey.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Are there specific things that you want that group to focus on other than what's already here?
I'd say try to address, if, you know, your concerns the most.
I'll shoot you an email.
This gets discussed.
If I could, if we're gonna table it, we probably need a motion to table it.
I'll make the motion to table it.
I'll second.
A motion seconded to table the approval of the new AI policy. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your left hand. Opposed, same. Motion carries. We'll move on to board open discussions. Dr. Dominguez, you're up.
Yes, thank you. That was a great board meeting. Thank you for looking at those policies, adopting those policies. That was a long, arduous task. The team really put a lot of time, energy, and effort into that. We're doing new administrative trainings this week. Those individuals are back on contract today. New administrators, veteran administrators will come on Wednesday. So a lot of vision and mission, culture being discussed in those rooms. Definitely wanted you guys to get some more of the articulation of what science of reading is, for just the vernacular for you guys to understand that that really does matter. Randy, I think board president said on the insurance topic, nobody really wants to have that discussion of paying more money for less coverage and those things. And that's just the world we're living in right now, post-COVID and construction costs and so forth. Dr. Rock's team and the rest of the team, the needs assessment is going to be important for you individuals as board members to, when we adopt the budget, CFO Jessica brings up the budget that we did look at our needs assessment. We're going to spend the money appropriately to try to move our students and buildings forward. The next thing, members of the Board of Education, with mixed emotion, I submit my letter of resignation as Superintendent of Schools, USD-457, effective May 31st, 2025, at the end of my contract. My decision to not seek a contract extension beyond this date is driven by the need to be closer to home and support my aging in-laws. During my tenure, I have had the privilege of working alongside an exceptional board, dedicated staff, and supportive community. Together, we have navigated challenges and celebrated many successes. The commitment and passion that Garden City community has made this journey immensely rewarding. Rest assured, I am committed to fulfilling my duties with the same dedication and enthusiasm through the remainder of my contract. This transition period will allow ample time to identify and support new leadership, ensuring the continued success of our schools and our students. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to each board member, staff member, and community member for your unwavering support and collaboration. Your individual contributions have made my time at Garden City filled with meaningful experiences and relationships that I will cherish forever. Thank you for the opportunity to serve this incredible district. Thank you.
Thank you. No, you're next.
I just want to say, thank you to the public, as they continue to engage in the reconfiguration process. We had a speaker tonight and we had others that showed up, that are showing their support for the process. So I appreciate that. I want to say thank you to the administrative staff that worked on the board policies. I know that was a huge undertaking, not only for you guys, but for the board. And we did it in a short amount of time. So I appreciate y'all doing that, so we can implement those for the new school year. So thank you to that. And I just want to say thank you to Dr. Dominguez. I appreciate all the hard work that you've put into our school district. I'm sad with your announcement that you're not seeking to stay with the district, but I just want to say thank you. You brought a lot of great things to the district. You brought a lot of energy to the district, and we sure appreciate you. You'll be missed.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Hughes for his public comment tonight. As we work through this discussion and assess whether grade reconfiguration is right for our school district and all the changes that go along with it, as much feedback as we can get is very important. I encourage people to stay informed. I think I checked earlier today. I think there was a little over 300 views on YouTube of the public meeting that we had on Wednesday last week, our board retreat, and we discussed it. We didn't have anybody in the audience observing that meeting. So I just really encourage you to share that, make sure people watch that. There's a lot of detailed information that was discussed in that meeting, and then offer feedback to all of us as board members. As you know, like we adopted new board policy tonight. I really want to thank our admin team for all the time and effort that was spent putting into that. That was a process that lasted several months, almost a year. And Josh and Drew, you guys particularly put a lot of time and energy into that. So thank you very much. And I too want to thank Dr. Dominguez for your tenure here and the impact you've made on our school district. It's been evident to me since I got on this board that you have a very high passion for students and they're seeing their success, particularly your passion around literacy. And I think you've made a lot of strides and improvements in our district and to help with that. So I really thank you for your efforts and how you've led us. So.
Well.
Echo what they've already said. Mike, I appreciate your comments and I would welcome a conversation with you. So you got my number, give me a call. The reconfiguration has been a nightmare. I mean, literally, like I've had nightmares about waking up and people screaming at me. So when I say nightmare, I mean nightmare. And we welcome, if you guys have better suggestions than what we're working on, I mean, please, we're open, we're not closed-minded, we don't have a one-size-cookie-cutter option. So if somebody out there has a better idea than we have, please give us a holler. Enjoyed the science of reading presentation. I have been an avid reader my entire life, and that's how I learned how to read. So I didn't know they changed it, and I'm really glad that they went back to that because reading is phenomenal. Thank you to the staff for everything they've done. Dr. Dominguez, I'm new, I'm just learning, but in my short period of time, I've learned the superintendent wears a lot of different hats, and appreciate everything that you've taught me in the last few months as I'm learning how to be a good board member.
Again, I echo everything that's been said. It kind of goes along when we get there. I do appreciate all of the presentations, and it took me back to when I was learning how to read. And so what that meant and what that looked like for me personally. And then as I learned to teach that, and I see the pendulum in education swings from whole language to phonemic awareness back and forth, and the emphasis of balanced literacy, I understand, but I do understand the necessity for phonemic awareness side of it. So appreciate that. I was reminded a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with another pastor completely independent of everything that's going on here, but they were talking about things happening within the church world, but how we made decisions and we voted towards mission. And I thought as we as a body, a board here, every vote that we make, every vote that I will make, and we all need to make, is we're voting towards the mission that we have set before us. And so everything is to make the school system better. And so I appreciate all of the circumstances and the comments, and doing what's best for the kids and all together. So appreciate that, and just want to share that thought as I've been thinking about that since that comment had been made to me several weeks ago. Do appreciate all the policy work, and even we saw the calendar in there, getting that set, and that puts us a little bit further out to help us prepare for greater things going forward. And so appreciate the calendar team and all of the things that went with that. And thinking of all the personnel that have been working so hard over the summer to getting the buildings ready for them to come back. And I know roofs are going on, and I know there's some other transitions, but I keep driving by schools and I see roofs being completed and I see projects going on, and I think these things are going on. So I thank all those teams that are working on that, making sure those things are going forward with that. And I know the teachers are getting excited and tongue in cheek to come back to school, and talk with several of them, and some are actually ready to get back to some normal routine. Sorry, right? And so appreciate them and all their hard work that they're doing. They're refreshing and getting ready for another great year here at USD-457. And Dr. Dominguez, appreciate again all your time. I think I was on the committee when you came in and interviewed. And so having that initial conversation with you there, and definitely been praying for you the whole time with all of this, but very much appreciate your time here and all that you brought. And I see your passion and your heart for kids. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I guess going last is good because everybody's already said. I agree with everything that was said. I appreciate Chief coming in and giving us his thoughts, and because I don't support closing schools. I don't think that's the right thing. But I do support a grade reconfiguration that causes tertiary effects. One of them being we need to make a bigger middle school that costs lots and lots of money to do that. So how do we pay for that? You know, how does that look? I don't know. And that's where please, if anybody has options or ideas of how we write that check to make KH bigger so it can take the sixth graders, I think that's an area we need to focus on. So, you know, I thank everybody for speaking out, all the emails we get, all the texts, everything. I do value that, and I do understand your input, and you as the voters and the people in this community make those decisions. So keep that coming. One thing I will mention that I keep getting asked about is that the grade reconfiguration will make class sizes bigger. That's not accurate information. As the school board, we set the limit on class sizes. That hasn't changed and it has no plans of change. So it might be another classroom in the school, but the classes themselves are not getting bigger. Right, Josh?
That's correct.
So I just want to get that information out there to people as well. I congratulate John and Jackie for your tenure as president, vice president. Job well done. I want to thank everybody on that, the building reconfiguration and all that. A lot keeps coming up with the long-term plan that Shane and Colleen and all of you guys worked on. That is very interesting, and I hope people will pay attention to that. And I think it's a good plan, and I think it has a place. We just need to follow it and it'll work. And then Trent for coming up here, giving us all the great news about insurance. You know, that's what we want to hear. More money, gonna cost us more money to insure our buildings. But I think with the long-term building plan and the insurance and what's available, I think we're okay. It's just gonna cost obviously more money. Dr. Dominguez, I too want to thank you for everything you've done and being a part of our district, and I really am impressed with you work and you work hard, and I appreciate that. Thanks. Based on that, with Dr. Dominguez's resignation, we will need to put on the agenda for next meeting for RFPs to start the process to hire somebody for a replacement. So we'll add that to the agenda for next meeting. That's all I have.
Mr. President, I'm not sure if we will need to make a motion tonight to accept Dr. Dominguez's resignation letter.
Yes.
Yes. So I move that we accept Dr. Dominguez's letter of resignation effective 5/31/2025, which is the end of his current contract.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the resignation as stated. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your left hand. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Now, based on that, we'll need to hire, we're looking at getting RFPs for a hire company for replacement. Yeah, the next board meeting is scheduled in the Board of Education room on August 5th, 2024 at 6 p.m.
Hey, Mr. President, I move that we go into executive session for 30 minutes. Okay, to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to non-elected personnel exception under COMA to protect the privacy interests of an identifiable individual beginning at 8:15. And the open meeting will resume in the board meeting room at 8:45 p.m. I would like to invite Dr. Dominguez and Jennifer Cunningham to join us in executive session.
Motion.
Coach, did you want Dr. Rock as well? Yeah. Okay, and Dr. Rock. And I'd like to invite Dr. Dominguez, Dr. Rock, and Jennifer Cunningham to join us in executive session.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded for executive session. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your left hand. Opposed, same. We will move to executive session.